Thanks for coming along to my talk today, collaborating with brands to create Magic VR. My name's Brynley Gibson. I'm a developer and creative. Been making games for about 15 years. I've worked at a number of different studios. There's a few titles there. And I'm currently the head of studios for Curve Digital Entertainment and Kuju. And Kuju is our work-for-hire company. We're part of a bigger media group called Catalyst. And that has also a testing company called Testronic, Curve Digital, the publisher, and then Kuju, which is our games developer. And Kuju, just to tell you a bit about that company, it's a very old UK developer, made over 120 games, long experience, but more recently we've been moving into the field of immersive technology, working in VR and working in AR. And we're really specializing in using Unreal and PSVR particularly. Now, my personal experience of getting into VR was as the EP at London Studio, Sony London Studio. We made a title called PlayStation VR Worlds. And this was one of the launch titles for PSVR, and it was curated sort of 5 experiences, although we did a lot of prototyping. We ended up with 5 experiences built from the ground up for PSVR. Very broad variety in terms of genre, play styles. We were there to sort of show off what you could do with VR, not just for consumers, but also for other developers. They were often putting our work up onto DevNet so people could examine it and have a look at it. It itself was a kind of branding exercise. That was quite an interesting part of it. We were actually making demos, live demos for the public every quarter, every 3 months. So if any of you are developers there, you know how tough it is to make a game. We imagine making a game, but also doing live updates to the public every 3 months. Big challenge, but also very exciting to be so deeply involved in the launch. Our team had a sort of deep influence on the sort of final look of how VR is shown for PSVR, even things like screenshots as well. And so it was great fun to sort of be embedded in that launch and come up with that game. But I'm going to talk about a new experience that we made, was launched back in April today, which is called the Chainsmokers Paris VR. And it's an interactive music experience. And I'm going to talk about our process, how we sort of came up with this experience, talk about the process behind it, and then sort of put it into a case study about this experience. So this was made with a branding agency called Ralph Creative, and it was part of a larger campaign called Lost in Music, which was Sony really sort of trying to push out that idea that they're a very strong brand, they have great technology, but they also have great entertainers, great artists. And the Chainsmokers, although maybe not everyone's tastes, are a sort of very big Grammy award-winning act that they have. And this was built primarily for live shows. So South by Southwest was where it premiered. We then went into various other events. But we also knew it would be coming to the Sony store, so that's something else we had to put in mind. So first off, though, what about branded content? Where does it actually fit into the ecosystem? Why should we even be thinking about it? So first of all, if you have branded content being created, it's often very cheap or free, and it's extra content for consumers. It's something right now, as we're trying to get new types of technology off the ground, we need a constant flow of content. So it's fantastic for consumers to have this additional content coming in. And if people are paid to make it, well, then that's great for developers. It means we can eat. It means we can develop our technology. It also means we can be learning about how to make immersive technologies. And of course, that then gives us the time and the budgets to go on to make more IP for consumers. Seems to be a bit of an error there on the slide there. Sorry about that. The third point, though, is it attracts a broad audience. The good thing about having brands is it opens it up outside the normal kind of users and consumers that we have. And that's a very strong thing with brands. And of course, that then is also a positive step that leads into it. You know, more software sales means publishers will look to create more content, goes to developers, and then ultimately the consumer ends up with more content. So it's a really key kind of pillar right now at the beginning of an industry for us to be creating branded content, because it will help build it up. It's very, very important in these early stages. So brands, what do they want? Okay, well, brands want engagement. I'm going to do some very unscientific graphs in a minute. And this is a sort of technical description of engagement, the process of forming an emotional attachment between a consumer and a brand with positive associations. So that's what they're after. And if we look at kind of the idea of engagement, if we go from passive media into interactive media, we see sort of this growth of engagement. And for me, when we talk about immersive technologies, and that could be traditional gaming, but also VR as well, we're seeing a sort of supercharging of engagement, and it's very effective. And it's this interactivity that increases engagement. Why does it do that? Well, quite simply, you're going from being passive into active, and it's that engagement that creates a bond. You are having to think about it, and that thinking, that action that you're doing, attaches you to it. And then when we talk about VR, which for me is the most immersive experiences you can have, you're sort of supercharging that whole thing. You're really sort of stepping it up one more layer. Okay. Let's see. It sort of jumped on a bit too quickly there. Great. So we talk about these sort of 3 pillars that we use, as well as our sort of normal creative process. This is really just about sort of brands and how we think about it. How do we create an immersive, interactive experience? So pillar 1, we talk about an emotional engagement cycle. Pillar 2 is about gamification, something we all do all the time. And then finally, it's thinking about brand and consumer focus, thinking about the brands and applying that to our work. And what we're trying to do is create this sort of hyper engagement. That's what we want. So people can walk away from an experience with a really positive brand association. So let's break those pillars down. So first off, the virtuous circle of emotional engagement. So we talk about 3 steps here. First off, it's the priming to be entertained. Then it's about immersing them through various means. And then it's a payoff, a moment of wow. And the idea being, if we can create this circle and we can keep repeating it, we can layer it up and create a more and more engaging experience. So what do I mean by those 3 things? Well, priming to be entertained, one of the great things about VR is just the excitement of having a headset. You know, at this point in time, it's so new, even that gets people excited, and they want to know what's going to happen next, and they're already anticipating in a positive way. Building immersion, well, there's many, many ways to build immersion. That's a whole separate talk. But I would say believability is a great way to step in there, and comfort, very important ways of stepping people into your world. And a moment of wow, there's many VR tricks out there, things that work particularly well in VR, and they can be your payoffs. So you can think about those things. How are we going to feed those into our experience to pay off and then keep the circle going? So if we can sort of follow these steps and we can sort of design our experience around that, we're already on our way to creating a powerful branded experience. So experience gamification is just standard stuff that game devs do, but brand teams don't necessarily know about. And for me, I've broken that down as to teach, to entertain, and then to retain. So I think with branded VR experiences, it's very important with the teaching for it to happen quite quickly, for it to be intuitive. Often this would happen at a live event, so you don't have long to teach someone about the experience. So it has to be quick and it has to be natural. Entertainment, of course, could be narrative, it could be a puzzle. There's many, many ways to entertain people. That's whatever your experience is, very specific. But retention, that's very important and something we have a great ability to do. And that could be through creativity. It could be giving exploration as an opportunity. It also could be about rewarding. But above all, ensure the experience is comfortable so people will want to stay in it and enjoy it and spend the time there. And our final pillar is this brand and commercial focus. We have the brand, we have the experience, and we're looking them to become connected, a symbiosis. So when we think about what the subject matter is of our experience, we want it to work faithfully with the brand. It can't just be slapped on. I think users are very, very savvy these days. You can't get away with that. You really have to be honest with them, with what you create. And we have a few steps that we go through. We think about, we talk about this authentic brand approach. What is right for the brand? So does the team that's maybe hiring you have sort of KPIs, key performance indicators they want to hit? So that might not be about sales. In fact, it probably definitely isn't about selling lots of units. It could be more about pushing out a message or going after a new audience altogether. So if you find out that information, you can then target that in the experience you create. User-centric design is important in all experiences, but I think with branded content, it's even more important because you're not normally playing to your normal audience. You're not necessarily going after gamers, for example. So you have to think, well, what kind of users are we actually going to have using this experience? So how do we make it best for them? And just to reinforce again, it's a symbiotic relationship. Yes, the experience should be doing something great for the brand, but the brand should be doing something for the experience. It should be there and have a purpose and a meaning. So I'm going to talk about the actual experience we built. I'm going to play a very short clip. It's on the PSVR store. You can download it. It's free. It's a great price point for all sorts of reasons. So I'm just going to play you a very quick clip, and hopefully we'll set some sound.
We were staying in Paris to get away from your parents, and I thought, wow, if I could take this in a shot right now, I don't think that we could work this out. I don't tell it. I don't know if it's fair, but I thought, how could I let you fall by yourself? Well, I'm wasted for someone else. If we go down, then we go down together. They'll say you could.
So I would say, if you work on a music experience like that, the song will haunt you, and you will hear it wherever you go for the rest of your life. So we were tasked with creating an interactive music experience for one of Sony Music's biggest acts. And sort of the narrative is you enter into one of the band members' minds, and you sort of go into this dream state, and you help recreate this song through his memories, places he's been, the fans he's seen, the gigs he's played at. And it's sort of dynamic, and it's immersive. It allows the user to sort of not just remix the visuals, but also the music itself. So it's quite an intimate experience for fans, because they come up with their own version of the track. So if we go through the pillars now, emotional engagement, experience gamification, and brand and commercial focus, I'm just going to cherry pick a few items of each of those and what we did to build that experience. So with emotional engagement, the primer, well, we actually had this, that's actually the holding screen, and it was really important for us that that would be a powerful VR experience in its own right. Could be the first time that someone's ever used VR, so it had to be inviting, but also a really nice bit of VR, and it was this kind of wonderful VFX screen that already got people excited about what they were about to experience. With building immersion, one of the things we did was start with a relatable space. You saw there, you sort of started in a desert, an open desert space, Americana, we're all used to it from the movies. And this is a really nice way to introduce someone to VR before you kind of get a bit weird and crazy, and it beds people in and creates a sense of believability. And there's many moments of wow in there, but one of the first ones is the instant reaction. The first time you look at an object, such as those big pylons, and they explode and they play a chord of music in tune and on time, and that's the point where people think, wow, I can control this world just with the power of my gaze. And it's quite a powerful moment for players. In terms of experience gamification, there we go. So the teaching, entertaining, and retaining. So we actually did a little trick at the very beginning. We did a forced interaction. So we put a bunch of interactions right in front of the player's face, and we made the first one happen. And the idea there was to make them think that they'd already done it themselves, and then hopefully start to look around and trigger off more ones. So it was a very subtle, secret way to teach them. I mean, it's a very simple mechanic, but we wanted to teach them without any kind of labor or heavy sort of tutorializing. Entertainment, well, this experience is a visual, auditory, kinesthetic treat. That's what we're going for. But of course, there's many different ways of creating entertainment. And with the retention, we actually have multiple pathways. So if you go through the track, you can get a very different experience and end up with a very different remix of the song if you take the forest rather than the city, for an example. But we also hid interactions inside the experience, so you don't necessarily find them all when you go through it the first time. You'll want to go back and try and play it. Yoshida from PlayStation said he played like 5-6 times because he was just obsessed with trying to find all the hidden little bits and bobs that we put in there. We might not even know all the bits that are in there. So finally, brand and commercial focus, very important with creating this kind of content. So our authentic approach, we sort of looked at what the Chainsmokers were about as a brand, as a band. We looked at their songs and their music and their live events, and something we found was that lots of live videos and lots of selfie videos, and that became a kind of theme in the tune. So we had a video of them. Actually, they recorded a little video for us that starts the experience, it bookends it. We also had a competition where fans could get their selfies into the experience itself that you can interact with. But we also wanted it to be a music video. So you should be able to just watch it, and it's done in a real-time engine, but it should still feel like and follow the rules of a music video. In terms of the KPIs, I've talked about Sony's requirements, they wanted to show off the power of their brand, and hopefully we did that with, a sympathetic piece of PSVR, but also fan engagement. That was a big thing for them. So we always had to think about what would the fans like, how would they be able to play it, and that led into our decision making, and that goes into that final point. The pack is the Chainsmoker fans, that's what they're called. And it helped us near the end. We only made it over sort of 3 to 4 months. There was features that are we going to put this in, put that in? And we'd think about, well, these guys, they've never used PSVR. What's going to be the right feature? How do we make that decision? And so thinking about that player really fed into our decision making. So in summing up, think about building up those layers of immersion to create that engagement. That's what you want, that emotional engagement. Use all the knowledge you have of making games and gamification to keep people attached to the brand and have a really good, fun experience. And finally, design honestly. Think about who the player is and be authentic to that brand. And that is the best way to get a great experience with a positive brand association. And that's the end of my talk. Thanks very much. Cheers.